welcome. We have a fantastic session in store for all of you today. We're not drinking beers up here, these are waters. But this is an interesting look, I like it. All right, I have two unbelievably intelligent, talented women in front of you all today. We have Finola Austin from Linqia, Haley Kalil. How many of you follow Haley on social media? Haley Bailey? Yeah?
You guys have good taste. No, I'm kidding.
If you don't, I hate phones during sessions, but let's do 20 seconds. Take out your phones. This is worth the time. Follow Haley. What's the first channel if somebody goes to follow you? What do you normally say?
Depends on their style.
Oh, that's
TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Snapchat Spotlight if you're 12. Anything, you know?
Okay, so Snapchat for everybody. All right, so we have a lot to talk through. We're going to go through this pretty quickly, but an interesting topic today, Tentpoles, how brands infiltrate culture in the age of social. But first, you both have insanely interesting backgrounds. So I want to start there on how you got here in this journey. Haley, why don't we start with you? So you studied science, you have a degree, you could tell people what your degrees are, you're still active in that community.
Yeah.
How did you go from X to Y?
Yeah, grew up in STEM. My parents are both engineers, so I went to school for biomedical sciences and psych with a minor in chem. Was planning on going to medical school, worked in an immunology lab, then became a model, horrible for my mental health. Quit that and started posting comedy content last year around this time. And now here I am as a full-blown content creator. It's wild.
It is. How many followers do you have across all?
I think collectively almost 11 million.
And this is 1 year?
This is one. It'll be a year on October 23rd.
That is crazy. That is crazy.
It's been wild.
Yeah. And Finola, 19th century literature was the major, published author, 1, 2 books, 3 books?
One published.
1 book, okay, maybe more coming. How did you go from that? And by the way, Finola comes from Meta, so social media experience, publisher experience. So we have, between the two of them, we cover the gamut of kind of the mindset of marketing. But again, how did you go from that to here?
Yeah, it might seem like a little bit of a weird switch, but the type of 19th century literature my master's was in was the really popularist 19th century literature. So something called Victorian sensation fiction. Lots of bigamy, murder, people being pushed down wells. And it was the popular entertainment of its day. So these books were serialized, and there were no copyright laws. So people would be guessing the endings, putting on plays at the theater before they knew the ending, trying to guess what was going to happen. And there was merchandising around it as well. So I was always really into how do you touch as many people as possible and how do you earn attention? And so social media was kind of what I wanted to do. Started in PR, then ad agencies, then media side at Refinery 29, then went to a platform to learn it from the inside. And now at Linqia, because kind of seeing influence as the future of earning that attention for brands.
Love it. Current role, how do you explain it to your parents?
Oh, I mean, it's really tough. Every time I go home, I try, but I'm head of creative strategy at Linqia. So, at the core of that, we're coming up with really awesome creative ideas for brands of how they can execute with great content creators. And that means like giving those content creators enough flexibility to bring their creativity to bear as well. So we're not like a traditional creative director who's tightly controlling the output. We're more trying to guide, inspire, and make sure that content is answering brands' needs while it's still at the same time being authentic to the creators' followers.
Is everyone familiar with Linqia, by the way? I guess we didn't really introduce Linqia. I see a lot of head nods. But so Finola and I are actually both at Linqia, one of the largest influencer agencies in North America. So very focused on the creator experience. I want to pose the same question to you. How do you explain what you do to your parents?
Oh, boy. I like to say that I'm like an SNL, but just with my friends and on my own channels. That's really it. It's like I do little sketches, I do kind of lifestyle comedy, I do relatable stuff for my girls out there. That's the majority of my following. Just kind of lifestyle comedy stuff.
Yeah, was there a point when you kind of knew something was taking off? Was there some kind of hitch? Because you've done a ton of creator collabs too. Yes,
yeah. I think collabs are the bread and butter of how to grow as a creator. But for me, I did a collab with somebody named Caleb Simpson, if you're familiar, all with the New York City market. He's the guy that walks around and says, how much do you pay for rent in New York? And weirdly, nobody tries to arrest him. He's awesome. And so we collabed and he toured my apartment and that shot off. And I saw the numbers and thought, oh my gosh, all these people are looking at my page, looking at my content. And I pumped out, I think it was 5 comedy sketches that day. And that's the first day that my channel kind of took off. And that was last October. So now it's full circle and I'm sitting right here.
The partnerships are great. I think the Jared Leto one, Ed Sheeran, I got a good story for you later on Ed Sheeran. You've done some really, really good, cool partnerships.
Thank you. Yeah, I think everyone is now, even big names like Ed. I mean, why does he need content creation? Like, he's Ed Sheeran, but here he is filming in my apartment.
Yeah.
So it just proves that there's something about content creation that like everyone is leaning into because there's a power about it.
Yeah, we were even talking with the Ad Week team before of what sessions were getting a lot of the lines and things, and a lot of it was creator sessions. And so it speaks to just where this industry is heading, especially how much is dominating the conversation. This is not an influencer marketing or even social media show, yet it's dominating the conversation. All right, let's get to the topic at hand. Tentpoles, how brands infiltrate culture in the age of social. Finola, I'll start with you. Why is there a question mark on Tentpoles, and what does this mean?
Yeah, it's a great question. So as we were thinking about what to talk about at this session, we're kind of thinking about how social media has changed in the last 10 years. And at the very beginning of my career, when I worked in PR, part of my job was to run the social media handles for brands. I did an auto glass repair and replacement company, I did a bank, and we were pumping out content that nobody cared about. And those milestone moments in the calendar were all we talked about. We had to have a perspective on everything from Valentine's Day to St. Patrick's Day, because what do those dates even mean if you haven't heard from an auto glass repair and replacement company about what they think about it? And now what we're seeing is that those times of year, seasons, tentpole moments, they still do matter, right? Like, we know and can predict some of social conversation around different moments through the year. But there are also things that just light a match, trends that pop up. Like, who knew we would all be talking about the Roman Empire a few weeks ago? And then that happened on social. And so what we're seeing from brands is a desire to be more agile, but also questions about how quickly they can move, whether they need to be part of every single conversation. I'm a big consumer of Reddit as a social platform, and I love the subreddit Fellow Kids, which mocks brands that are trying to speak like a Gen Zer and getting it wrong or coming too late to the conversation. So I think the question is here because it's like, well, how can you plan? How can you plan for the unplannable? Which trends do we think have sticking power versus which ones don't? And then how can we tap into influences to bring it to life? And then the other thing I'd say is that even with those traditional tentpole moments, we're seeing brands that do well kind of come from a less traditional kind of standpoint. So you mentioned SNL, right? I think about Thanksgiving and that song Back Home Ballers, which came out a few years ago, and yet every Thanksgiving that strikes a chord because it's a more realistic look at, and a more relatable look at that tentpole moment. Or, I'm sure a lot of you are thinking about Super Bowl for 2024 right now. So, Super Bowl is like a great moment where you can think about how to use that second screen and how to hack the moment or create content that's not traditional tentpole advertising. So those are some of the things that are top of mind for me.
Yeah. Was anyone at TikTok's Healthcare Summit yesterday? Yeah, a few hands. Yeah, they were talking about if you look at the spikes in all the social conversation, it's not Super Bowl, Valentine's Day, back to school. Like, that's just not how consumers interact with these social platforms. So as much as we love calendaring that way, and it is more simple to plan that way, that's not really how the conversation is being driven right now. For you, Haley, a lot of your content is about cultural relevance, the current moment. As a brand, you're always trying to do two things: partner with creators, but you're also a creator yourself. You're trying to have your brand grow following, become a creator.
Yep.
How do you plan your content? Do you calendar it for the year, or how do you think about culture?
Absolutely not. I think me, as well as a lot of content creators, especially younger ones, Gen Z, and now we're getting into Gen Alpha, they do not schedule anything. They are just like, whatever they feel in the moment, they're going to post it, they're going to make it. There's so many things that change so fast on social. I mean, I don't think we ever thought we'd be talking about the Grimace Shake as much as we were, but it overtook my entire FYP for, I would say, 2 weeks straight. It was just Grimace Shake, Grimace Shake, Grimace Shake. And so I think it's fun to watch brands try to harness the power of this like random posting. For me, there's really nothing scheduled about it, unless, of course, I'm working with a brand that needs a long time to prep a certain concept, and then I'll have a scheduled post. But everything else is kind of in the moment.
When brands reach out, is it surrounding these tentpole moments, or is it more evergreen?
I would say, see, I didn't know what the word tentpole meant in this context until I actually talked to these lovely people, because it's just a word that isn't around for creators. I don't think a lot of creators even know what that means. For me, it's more like, hey, we have the launch of this new product. That's a lot of what I do. And then I do have things for Christmas, obviously. You have Thanksgiving. Super Bowl is a big one. There's all these things set up for Super Bowl. But I think brands are starting to lean more into the moments that happen on social media versus Thanksgiving, Christmas, all of these things that we're used to seeing back when we'd go to the mall to go to Kohl's.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. It's funny, I heard a lot of people ask about Duolingo in the last couple weeks. I feel like that's a popular one. We actually have Zara, who runs that account, coming on the Creator Economy Live podcast in 2 weeks. If you don't follow that podcast, it's a great podcast. We co-host that one. But interesting how she will hop on every single trend. And I do think some brands then feel this pressure of, I have to be part of everything. And that can lead to big time burnout for social media agencies. That can backfire if it's not tasteful. There could be legalities behind that. So how would you, Finola, talk to brands about what is micro versus macro, and what trends do you actually have to think about?
Yeah, and I think there's an important distinction here between what brands are doing on their organic channels versus what they're investing more in with influencer marketing campaigns or with their paid social as well. So I think, it depends on what type of brand you are. There are always going to be moments that are huge. If you're a jewelry brand, gifting is going to be important. So that holiday season or Valentine's Day is always going to be a moment that you're going to want to plan for and do great work around. There might be other tentpole moments that are less relevant, where maybe you can throw up a quick organic post if you want to say something about it. Don't expect it to do well. That's the 2023 equivalent of, the St. Patrick's Day autoglass kind of a post that I was working on back in the day. For brands, though, that have identified those strategic moments that they want to be showing up, I think it's then about saying, well, how can we do something different? So I think a big change I've seen is just going from the testimonial style influencer content of, here's this product, I recommend this product, to actually more creatively driven ideas. And that's where an influencer partner comes in that can help guide that process and help you understand what level of creative freedom to give to creators while still protecting your brand. How do we make sure all those mandatories are there in the brief? How do we make sure that your legal department isn't going to be really upset about that content or cause any delays? But how do we make sure that you're still showing up in a way that stands out against all of the noise? And that can be tapping into those trends that have more longevity. So some of those are things like skit comedy, not going anywhere on social media. It's absolutely huge. It can be tapping into particular content formats that we have, right? Like green screen, huge. If you want to demo how an app works, how to sign up for something on a website, how to fill in a form about your hair type to get customized hair products, all of that is going to be around for a while. Or really fun transitions and VFX effects. Those are the kind of trends that I'm saying you should be jumping on as a brand, and you should be working with partners who can help you do that. The type of trends you might want to steer clear of are those trending audios that are all over your For You page for 1 week and then sound kind of stale and tired by the following week. Those trends that are more flash in the pan moments where you don't really need to show up and you're not going to miss out on much if you don't.
Yeah. Do you feel an internal pressure on those flash in the pan of that you have to participate in them as a creator, or do you also stick to things that you feel like are going to have longer?
Oh, no, I love a flash in a pan. But then again, I also post a lot more, and most of my stuff isn't branded. So for the people that are social media girls, they're scrolling and they're like, oh, Haley did this trend, and it's fun for them to see all of their favorite creators doing the trend in their own voice. So those are great for me. But as a brand, yeah, it's going to be a very quick hit, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Like, you got to think of a stronger ad that's going to last, because sometimes you run an ad boost for 30 days, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. So that people are just going to scroll right past that because they've heard that audio 10,000 times and they don't even want to see another one.
Yeah. We actually, as a company, rebranded, what was that, a year ago, and we landed on the tagline, calm in the chaos, for some of this person where we do feel like trends is very chaotic. We had a whole conversation on the pod a couple weeks about unhinged brands and what's happening with unhinged content. I agree. I don't think you need to be on most of these things that are happening out there, but it's very hard to decide which you do be a part of. And I think that's leading to a lot of stress for brands. And that goes back to just, do you understand yourself as a brand? Do you understand what you stand for? And which moments properly represent that? Because Taylor Swift, there was a lot of creative content, but you don't have to be part of that conversation if it doesn't fit for you. I had a conversation with a beer company the other day, and it was like, does a beer brand really need to be part of this conversation? Like, you know what you are, you have to represent that. So I definitely agree with all that. With creators, so let's talk about brand partnerships, because I know we're about halfway through, so we should switch to that. What do you define as a good brand partnership in terms of the message, the products, et cetera? Like, how do you know something is going to be successful and you want to work with that brand?
I think creative control is really important. So if you trust a content creator, and I don't think a brand is going to work with a content creator, hopefully, if they don't trust their creative process, give a content creator some creative freedom. Because when we, as people that like study this every single day, I mean, I'm on TikTok an embarrassing amount of time, probably close to like 8 hours a day. So I know the culture of the app. And so when I'm telling a brand like, hey guys, this is gonna do well, trust that I know that it's gonna do well, especially since I know my audience too. So I think that's the biggest thing, is brands that aren't stuck in this like, oh, you have to say it's nourishing and replenishing. Like, that's not gonna do well. The second you hear those certain lines that sound like an ad that you're watching on TV, you're gonna scroll right past it.
Yep.
Like, you really are. There's so much content online that why would I waste my time watching an ad if it just seems like an ad that I would see if I was watching TV? Like, I wouldn't. So I'm gonna just keep scrolling. And so it's important to make sure that the content isn't too branded and that you give the creator a lot of freedom.
So Finola, how do you do that properly? Because at the end of the day, we're always working with the person on the other side of the brief. And mostly those people are in social or creator, and they know that, but they're like, legal and regulatory and all the brand points, and I would love to not have any of this in the brief, but my hands are tied. So how do you manage and let someone like Haley actually have more control?
Yeah. I think first, just one quick point on this thing about your For You page and you know what's going to work on the app. I think that's so true for influencers because they know their audience and they're going to be posting to that audience. I think it's less true for you and me because what my For You page looks like might not be what the For You page of the target audience for a particular brand looks like. And that's why it's so important that you're rooting all your creative ideas and insights, that you're not thinking that your experience of the world is the same as everybody else's, especially when we're thinking about reaching more diverse audiences. So that's, I'd say, a distinction between coming at it from a content creator lens versus from more of the brand lens. If I need to make sure I'm turning to social listening tools or our own tool, Resonate, to really understand what's doing well on parts of the platform that I might not have access to. And I think that's kind of starts to answer that question as well. It's all about the brief. So first, there needs to be an idea. The idea can't just be, let's reach our audience saying how great our product or brand is. There needs to be a creative idea at the heart of the campaign, and you need to discover the right influencer talent to execute on that idea. So having the North Star of what are you looking for from your creators? What is the KPI here? And it can't be everything. It can't be, well, we want awareness and buzz, but also sales, and I would really like people to understand these 14 messages about us. Like, it all starts with a good, clear, crisp brief that you can give your influencer agency, and they in turn can translate that into creator-friendly language. When it comes to giving them the creative freedom, I love, when writing briefs for creators, to compliment them and tell them, hey, we loved what you did in this other video, whether for another brand or something they did organically. Can you use a similar technique to speak about this brand? So compliment what they're already doing. Don't ask someone who never does voiceover to do voiceover. Don't ask someone who can't dance to dance. Like, we need to have that really clear set of criteria for what sort of influencers we want to find, and then allow them to spread the message in their way. But I know it's marketing 101, but a crisp, clear KPI that we can all work towards, and one that doesn't shift. So halfway through the program, when you've been trying to get buzz and virality, it's like, oh, but we're not actually moving product. That's a very different brief from the very beginning.
Yep. Yeah, you can have a lot of goals. You can only have one North Star. What is the North Star? Are we designing everything to that North Star? Two trends that we're seeing a lot, and so I want to get both of your feedbacks on. One is obviously media, so we'll come back to that. The second is this idea of UGC content, and we're calling it at Linqia CGC, creator-generated content. Would you ever work with a brand where maybe you're posting one thing and then giving them on the back end that more branded message or something that isn't necessarily perfect for your audience? And are you hearing more requests for things where they don't even want you to post, they want it for media or their own channel?
Yeah, I do get requests like that. I think For me as a creator, and it depends completely on the creator that you're going with, I tend to stay clear of really branded content because I think it turns people off from your channel. They're like, oh, this girl's just constantly trying to sell us something. And even if you're on a brand's channel, if you're scrolling on TikTok and it's a sponsored ad, and let's say it's coming from Target, and it's still your face, they're still like, oh, that's Haley, and she is trying to sell us vitamins. I don't love that image because I think Gen Z and younger just have been advertised to their entire life, and they are over it. They're like, nope, nope. So I try to keep that in mind. But yeah, I think a lot of content creators are getting requests for more of like, hey, this is the style of our brands page. Can you do something in this style for our page, and then in your style for yours? And I'm totally open to doing that. I think that it's interesting.
Yeah, it's an intelligence and an understanding that you got to earn the right to convert an audience, and if you're just constantly trying to convert them immediately, they will never convert at all.
Yes.
And if you can just build the trust and bring people down, they will eventually convert. Let's talk paid media. So brands value paid media equally, if not more, little inside scoop, as the organic reach of the creator. How do you then balance that, considering what Haley just said?
Yeah, so I spent the last 4 years at Meta entirely working on paid, so it was interesting for me to come back to the organic space as well. And the way I see it, a lot of brands have a big problem with their paid, which is creative fatigue. They don't have enough great social first content. They maybe get a couple of times a year from their creative agency a load of assets that were TV first. Social cut downs is one of my least favorite words because you can't take a 30-second spot and then make it make sense in 6 seconds. And I've spent a lot of time trying. It's a real problem if they haven't designed for social media from the very beginning. And then on the other hand, we have content creators who are making awesome content for social all day, every day, like 5 posts in a day. That's crazy to me. You're putting out such high quality content. And so you think it's a marriage made in heaven, right? Like we can just take these great content creators and these brands that need to fuel their paid media. But it's hard because there are different needs, and what works in paid isn't necessarily what works in organic. We tend to see shorter content is what's needed in paid versus audiences have more patience to watch a long video from a creator whose face they know, who they already follow. There's also sound on versus sound off, right? So in the TikTok environment, which we've been speaking about a lot, or on Reels, most people do have their sound on, and it's a very audio-led platform, and that's incredible. It's given us as creatives so many more opportunities to create really memorable creative for brands. But when you take that to a paid media space and you have those videos showing up in feed, we know that people don't have their sound on when they're scrolling through Instagram and Facebook. We know even in stories, it's around 60% sound on, rising up to over 80 for Reels. And so the ads need to make sense with the sound off. You need to make sure if you're in line at the grocery store or your kids are yelling that you still get that impression and understand the message. And so a lot of post-production treatment of great organic influencer content is what I'd be recommending for your paid social. So think about overlaid text treatments, adding title cards and end cards, making sure that that message is really delivered. And yes, potentially briefing creators to give you additional assets beyond what they're putting on paid. So if you need great GIFs of someone holding your product, that creator might not be posting that to their own Instagram, might look out of place on their feed, but that's a great thing for you to have if they're comfortable giving you that. And I also want to say to your point about your face and constantly trying to sell people things, again, it comes back to the type of creator. Some creators, their face is their brand. They're front and center in every piece of content. But if you're a VFX creator or someone who does amazing embroidery or makes clothes or films your hands doing cooking, it's not your face. It's more of your skill set as a content creator, and you might be much happier for a brand to use that in their paid media.
Yeah, and if you need to your point, Haley, sometimes you also could work with a creator that has little to no following if you just need an asset on the side, and there's a time to use someone like yourself, and that's different. We were talking about Corporate Natalie, who's actually also coming on the podcast in the next couple of weeks. Watch her ads. They are amazing. They're like entertaining ads. I look forward to Corporate Natalie's ads because she's her fully in the ad, and I think you do the same thing. You don't change anything about the organic versus the media, and that makes it entertaining. How many people invest in influencer in the audience? Brands, agencies, so a good number. How many do media with the content? So take the content of influencer, put it into media. Okay, similar number of hands. All right, media is a huge part of the equation. We do our annual report every year, State of Influencer Marketing, that went live 3 or 4 weeks ago. and there's all kinds of data on where's the money coming from, what channels are they using it in. I thought it was so interesting that paid social and organic social was obviously 1 and 2, but display, CTV, email, digital out of home, you're gonna start seeing your face. Look at those contracts of where the content could be used all over the place because brands are understanding this is no longer a social construct.
And it's exciting for influencers too, right? Like if you look at, I think CeraVe is one we talk about a lot, is doing an awesome job with their influencers. The excitement of those dermatologists to see themselves on billboards in Times Square, like that's something that they didn't imagine for themselves when they started sharing skincare advice to a few followers on social media. So I think with the taking of that content to new places, it's exciting from a brand's perspective because this is much more price effective than traditional production with a creative agency, but it's also exciting for these influencers. They're growing their followings, and I think we see that from the creators we work with. They want long-term relationship with brands that bring them to places they never thought they would be, that bring them into a Super Bowl spot, that bring them to a huge billboard, that give them the opportunity to co-create a product. Like the excitement of those creators who found that their menu hacks were on Chipotle's app. Like these are things that people never imagined for themselves, that brands have the reach to make a possibility.
I was part of the CeraVe campaign, and I saw myself on a billboard, and that was part of the process. Is I would always do these fake billboard reveals, and I would Photoshop myself onto a billboard. And CeraVe took notice and was like, "We're going to put you on the billboard." And then my following sees that and goes, "Oh wow, Haley achieved something that she wanted to achieve." So of course the engagement in the post was much higher than if it was just like a plain piece of organic media.
Yeah, paying attention to the feed and knowing what the
Yes.
creators. How was
Yep.
the academy? You went to the academy.
Oh, it was so much fun.
Yeah.
CeraVe, they are, I always pronounce it wrong because I'm from Minnesota, and they always have to correct me, but they are a wonderful company to work with. I think that they're brilliant with their social. They always pick trending creators. They always let the creator kind of figure out how to take the brief and turn it into their voice.
Yep.
They're a great brand to look at for social.
Yeah, they've done social and creator first.
Yes.
Like that really is their strategy starts there. 3 minutes, let's do a rapid fire. Okay, are we ready for rapid fire?
I think
All right,
so.
I'm gonna ask, we're gonna do 3 questions, one at a time. You could each go. I'll start with Haley. Which brands do you feel, other than CeraVe, are killing it on social right now?
Duolingo, Skims, and L'Oreal.
3 good ones. Finola.
Yeah, I mean, Duolingo again, Ryanair for being really risky, even trolling their consumers, really respect that. I'd say Chipotle that I just mentioned as well, and I think you're right that McDonald's did such an amazing job last year for Grimace's birthday in their organic and their influencer and paid as well.
Love it. Would you ever launch your own brand, and if so, what would the products be?
Maybe, but it's a lot of work. It would probably be like comfy clothes, sweatpants, crop tops.
Okay. Very Finola.
Not really relevant for me, but I will say I'm wearing an influencer's brand right now. So Freddie Cousins Brown, she's a British influencer, goes by Freddie My Love, and it's been amazing to follow her for must be 10 years and to see her coming out with a fashion label that's on its 4th or 5th collection already.
Interesting. What I thought was interesting is we were talking to Maxine the Corgi. I don't know if you follow Maxine the Corgi the other day, and he started a creator brand. And I asked him the question, if a brand had approached you in that space and said, we want to start something with you, under our line, maybe it's rev share, I don't know what it is, would you have ever started this brand? And he said, definitely not. So to the point, I don't know who listens to All In podcast, there was a rant David had on there, Friedberg. These creators are either going to be your competitors moving forward or your partners. There is no question about this. Especially CPG and beauty, every category, these creators are going to have a much easier time starting brands in the next 10 years. I would get them on your side now. Figure out how to do product collabs. That is going to be one of the biggest trends in the next decade. Final question. What has been your favorite collaboration, brand and then creator?
Creator, Zach King. I love him.
love
He's such
Zach.
a wonderful person. So much fun to work with. Brand, CeraVe, they were so great because it was a billboard, but oh man, Hugo Boss is also fun too. You get to do all these activations with Boss. Like the Maluma, I went to the Maluma concert the other night, and that was so much fun. So they're great too.
Is all that when you go to these events, is it part of the engagement, or these are all, they're calling you and they're saying, can you come to this, can you come to that?
It's usually, hey, we've got this big event. Maluma's going to be wearing Boss on stage. Write a concept to film him with you, and then that'll be the ad.
Very cool. Do you have a favorite brand or creator collab over the years?
Yeah, so it's hard because I'm newer to Linqia, so a lot of what I'm excited about that we're working on, we can't talk about yet. But I'd say one from my meta days was with Haley and we created not the tooth fairy, but the gum fairy for a toothpaste about gum disease, which was super fun to like cast our fairy and the other creators, and it was skit comedy. So just super fun. It was more produced than a lot of creator content, but just a really strong creative idea that became the lead for the campaign. And then you can probably speak to this example more than me because it predates my time at Linqia, but the Teach Me How to Gummy campaign, I think, is a really great example of taking that virality of dance trends and turning it for a brand. But I don't know if you give more background on that one, Keith.
You can ask, I know we're getting the time, you can ask about it at another time. We're out of time, so I want to thank you too. I would also say we have an after party tonight at the Moxie. Jeff Morrow is going to be there from the Food Network. Liv Schreiber is going to be there, a lot of people, so ask us about that if you want to join. Can I get a round of applause for these two amazing owners? Thank you both so much.